Chapter 5, Paris Aphorisms on Rationality. Quoting Jean Morel's Victor Hugo Philosophe, Philosophes, encore un effort si vous voulez être parisiens. All that is right. Ratio means calculation, measure, proportion, ration, equivalent. Rationality is the principle of perceiving the things that concern us from the point of view of their proportionality, measurability, and predictability. Rationalism is the dogmatic thesis that the measurable, calculable, conceivable, and thinkable essentially constitutes the real itself. Traditional criticism of rationality is the application of rationality upon itself and the reflection on the possibilities and limits of equivalence and adequacies in cognition, action, and judgment. Radicalized criticism of rationality objects to the excessiveness of measuring, dividing, and computing, as well as the immoderateness of rationalism in the establishment of criteria and measuring ranges. In each of these versions of the phenomenon, ratio, the idea of truth as relation is at play. It entails the assimilation of thoughts and actions to facts and situations. In order for assimilation to take place, however, dissimilation must have existed beforehand. It is only in a desert of missed marks that we can perceive the oases of convergence. The oasis is a place where things are right. It is the privileged place where things that correspond to each other fuse together. Culture is the art of creating oases, places where the cultivation of correspondences is intentionally carried out. Having initially begun as an agricultural culture, it owes its existence to the inability to cultivate fields and soils as the right habitats for selected plants. Its secret is the correct correspondence of plants and soils, and the right alignment of the action of sowing and harvesting to the seasons. It was only by way of metaphorical seminars that it later spread through other fields, until the Cicerone cultura animi emerges from it, in which is what only then humanists really consider to be culture. Until the Cicerone cultura animi emerges from it, which is what only then humanists really consider to be culture. Until this culture as such materializes as a philosophical way of life, the concepts of the rational, the right, the appropriate, and the corresponding remain scattered into a variety of local practices. The multifaceted economy of small instances of rightness precedes the monoculture of the great truth. But only inconspicuous, unrecorded stories tell of these small economies, of the right, since they are lost in the seeming ahistoricity of the banal. The truth concepts of everyday life have remained silent in the face of self-evidence, speechless with triviality. The small worlds of pre-metaphysical correspondence are on the margins of philosophical interest. Who remembers that an even older truth function exists than that of the agricultural tilling of the soil, the truth of hunters and shooters for whom the right is what hits the mark? The projectile that finds its goal fulfills this type of rightness, which is one of the most fateful that have appeared in the history of rationality. We forget all too easily that the mark-hitting accuracy of modern artillery is more consequential for the history of the world today than any adherence to statements or arrival of predictions. Even so, our language has inconspicuously made note of the connection between the function of truth and the ballistic motif. In addition to what hunters and shooters think is right, as a second archaean age, there is a separate rationality of gatherers and seekers which occurs only when they find what they can use. The discovery you can take with you is what is right, according to the act of gathering. Even in this, modernity is mostly just an unconscious explorer of an archaic truth function, because all its countless expeditions of scientific research are a continuation, with modern means, of the gathering and taking home of the right discoveries. Except that for us it is no longer so clear what the discoveries will do to us in the comfort of our own home. for they have escaped the small ratio of seeking and finding and destroying the old familiar ways of life. These inventions and this research are sweeping through the world like a spring tide that is itself still devoid of truth. In addition to the archaic truth functions of hunter-gatherers, the hitting of the mark and the discovery, the ancient arts and crafts have bequeathed us a wealth of inconspicuous concepts of correspondence that establish rules, rations, and appropriateness within local practices. Thus, there is still a concept of truth of pharmacists, where what is right is what helps, a tailor's concept of truth, where what is right is what fits, a musician's concept of truth, which is measured by what is in tune, a carpenter's concept of truth, where what is right is what joins together, a mason's concept of truth, where what is done right is what stands and holds soundly. In all these fields, people gather experience with sub-truths that are inconspicuously pre-sorted into an equivalence between sentences and circumstances. This inconspicuousness is at the same time a criterion for the soundness and sensation-free consideration of these sectoral truth functions. It is only because they are already recorded and assumed to be vital that the later effort of the intellect to find perceptive, evident equivalences to things also becomes plausible and self-evident. The intellectual obligation to say what is right about reality accurately and appropriately subsists from the silent analogy to the manifold ways that the right is proven to be valuable in various equivalent fields. We probably would not know what a wrong statement would be if we did not know what a pair of ill-fitting pants felt like. Some theories are wrong, like some shots that miss their mark, and some assumptions prove to be successful, like shots that hit the bullseye, like treatments that help, and notes that are in tune. In this way, hitting the mark, discoveries, fusions, fittings, effects, harmonies, cohesions are regional variants of corresponding phenomena that become clear to every life as soon as it gets a bit more acquainted with them. With the gentle violence of the self-evident, they tune and orient all the complex functions of the human mind in the fields of theory, praxis, and art. It is only because the diverse cultures of correspondence and adequation had already inconspicuously prepared the ground that the higher truths of science, metaphysics, ethics, religion, and aesthetics were able to build their imposing buildings on it.